Hi, this is Kate from Generate Magic, and have you ever had that experience, I'm sure you have, where you were just waiting for something, whether it was like a text message or like a really important email or news about like a job offer, and you were just waiting and waiting and it just wasn't coming. And as soon as you turn your attention away from it, as soon as you go and just focus on doing on something else, even if it's just for a few minutes, that's usually when the message or when the news ends up coming in. And it kind of goes back to the saying, a watched pot never boils, right? And which I've actually experienced literally. It's really funny. Like I'll be boiling water and I'll be waiting next to it because I don't want to go back in and then have to come back out again. And I'm waiting and waiting, and finally I get tired of waiting, so I go back inside, and that's always the moment when the water boils every single time. It never fails me. And so I don't know, lately I've been kind of into this whole process of sort of like reverse engineering and trying to connect the dots. And even though obviously for the stuff to work, you don't have to know the how, right? But I guess it's just kind of the analytical mind in me wants to kind of get to the bottom of things. And yeah, I just kind of have that mind where I'm just always kind of curious about the mechanics and just kind of how things work. And so, yeah, so I was always kind of like wondering about this phenomenon and like what's behind it exactly. And I came up with a few theories, but still it kind of felt like something was missing. And then I heard this a Bible quote the other day, and I'm going to post the quote in the description in case I get part of it wrong. But and it's funny too, because I've often heard this and said this. I even created a whole workshop around this concept of the kingdom being within you, but I had never heard like the full context of the quote, or if I had, I hadn't remembered it. So here, I'm going to read it right now. And so the kingdom of God doesn't come with observation, nor will they say, see here or see there, for indeed the kingdom of God is within you. And so notice they say like observation, right? And so that goes back to the whole thing about the watched pot, right? Or when you're looking for something, right? You're waiting for something, or you're looking for evidence. I think all of us do this, and this is something I talked about recently. You don't really have full faith or full conviction, so you're looking for evidence that whatever you're doing is working. You're looking for the message, you're looking for, again, for the metrics to go up, and and then it kind of gets you just into this sort of frazzled state where you're frustrated, you're like, where is it? You're like, why is it taking so long? And it's just not a good state to be in at all. And so if anything, I think this knowledge of the kingdom is within you. It's not out there. I think if anything, you can do it not necessarily to get your manifestation faster, but just do it to get that peace. And because it's a much more peaceful state, right? When you're resting in your fulfillment, and you're just resting in that state, not necessarily the holy grail, the wish fulfilled, but just feeling fulfilled, right? Just feeling good in the moment and feeling like, okay, like I'm good right now. I'm not, even if the money doesn't come in, even if that text from that special someone doesn't come in today, like it's still going to be a good day. Like I'm going to be all right. And so that's just generally the state that you want to be in, right? No matter what. That's just a much preferable state to be in. And I experienced something else the other day that was kind of similar to this, where I live in a very remote location, literally the middle of nowhere, out in the middle of the jungle. You have to drive down a long dirt road to get there. And so I knew coming out here that internet could potentially be an issue. And there's no phone service out here. So pretty much if you lose the internet connection, then you lose all way to communicate with the outside world. And so and so I work from home, and so that requires doing Zoom meetings, and it requires, you pretty much always have to be, or not always, but it does require you to be connected, most of the day to the internet. And so I remember just kind of setting like an intention, just real simply, that whenever I had anything important, like a meeting or anything like that, that the internet would work. And for the almost every single time, it would come through for me. And so, there were a few times maybe where I had the meeting and maybe the internet was out at the moment, but then it would come on a few minutes later. So it was never like a crisis situation. Whereas there would be other times when the internet would go out, and sometimes it would be out for like multiple days. And so but whenever I needed it would always come through for me, essentially. And just the fact that I even have internet out in this location and that it works actually pretty good, I think is a miracle in itself. But there was one day when I had a meeting coming up, and on top of this meeting that was coming up, I was just kind of feeling frazzled in general and just anxious about some other kind of work-related things, and just not really in my full conviction, right? And not really in that trusting state. And sure enough, shortly before the meeting, the internet went out. And so I was waiting and waiting. I kept refreshing it. I was like, okay, this is just driving me mad. And so I need to step away. And so I did. I literally stepped away from the computer. I did some of my mantras from A Course in Miracles, like I am sustained by the love of God, and wherever I go, God goes with me wherever I go. And then sure enough, when I came back, the internet was working again. Sure, you could say, yeah, that was just a coincidence. Maybe it would have come back on anyway, who knows? But at least it got me into a more peaceful state where I was not in that frazzled, anxious state. And so to me, that's the full meaning of the kingdom is within you, right? Is your fulfillment, your peace, your joy. It's not going to come from out there, right? That fulfillment always comes from within. And it's always about you taking the first step. And sure, like once you do it often enough, you most likely will see it being reciprocated, like in your physical reality, right? But at the very least, you'll be experiencing that peace and that joy and that happiness, and that's really, the most we can ask for, right? And it really does get to that state of the peace that surpasses all understanding. So more and more, I'm just kind of like experiencing these things where all these little theories or little observations that I had, it's all just coming together, like more pieces of the puzzle. And I realize that it's me, like as a generative being, that's forming these connections, right? And you can do the same thing. And so I think it always kind of starts kind of from a place of inquiry, right? And never just kind of like, if you're feeling, frustrated with something, whether it's a situation or even if you just kind of feel frustrated, like something is not adding up, something is not making sense to you, just trusting that there's always another way of looking at it. And sometimes it just kind of takes stepping away from the situation a little bit to kind of see more of the puzzle, right? Or to get the clarity that you were looking for. And so with that, thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.